Some rule changes in the NFL for the upcoming season being discussed at the annual league meetings. And according to our NFL insider, Jonathan Jones, the proposal to call up a third quarterback because of injury during the game has been tabled. The NFL used to allow teams to have an emergency third QB on game day, but the league scrapped that rule back in 2011. It came up again after the 49ers ran out of quarterbacks in their NFC title game loss to the Eagles, going from Trey Lance to Jimmy G to eventually Brock Purdy throughout the season. And from quarterbacks to jerseys, here's a rule that has been approved. Players can now wear the number 0, and the Jacksonville Jaguars quickly getting to work, and it looks like Calvin Ridley might be the first NFL player in 2023 to do so. Ridley saying in part in a tweet, excited to be the first Jaguars player to wear 0. And we have JJ and Pete Prisco joining us here on CBS Sports HQ from the owners' meetings in Phoenix. And guys, you were there in the room out of all of the proposals. Let's break down what was approved and what wasn't approved. Starting with what was approved, guys, what stood out to you?
Well, first of all, she calls me JJ, but you're Pete Prisco. And They don't go with, yeah, okay.
I could be PP if you want me to.
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was approved? Well, we talked about it, the number 0, Pete Prisco's favorite number, PP0 over here. We have Calvin Ridley, who may be the first player in 2023 in the NFL to be wearing 0. I was actually joking with an NFL GM, and I said, hey, let me know who the first player is on your team who texts you saying, I want 0, because I think there's going to be a rush of guys. So haven't gotten that text just yet, but that will happen. That was the one sort of main thing. That's the one that's going to get the most Twitter retweets and whatnot. There are a couple of small things. So let's talk about maybe a 4th and 1 play, right? And it's very close, but ultimately it fails. Well, what happens then? There's a change of possession, and normally the television goes to break, and then they switch sides, right? Well, what is now going to happen is the replay video assist is going to take a very, very close look at those failed 4th down conversions that are close. So we're not going to see the coaches' challenges so much. So coaches can kind of preserve that red flag. They only get 2. They're going to be able to do that moving forward.
And usually those things never get overturned in the first place, which is going to save you a challenge, which makes a lot of sense. As for 0, I think it's fun. I think it adds some fun to the game. Why not let any player wear 0? They're limiting it still to who can and can't wear 0. But how about kickers? Kickers can now wear 99. How about that? That would be interesting, too. But again, it's just in fun. It doesn't really matter.
And then the other one that did pass, tripping. Tom Brady, Mac Jones, that's no longer a 10-yard penalty. That is now a personal foul, 15-yard penalty. You get a couple personal fouls, you wind up getting ejected. Very small thing, things that have been worked on for many, many months. Ultimately, the fan isn't really going to care about it that much unless they're buying Calvin Ridley's jersey.
Correct.
I mean, Pete, if you want a new nickname, just let me know and I can start, coining that one for you. But let's talk about what was not approved. And JJ, you said that this was more interesting when it came to what wasn't approved in those meetings.
Yeah, there was a number of proposals that ultimately did not get approved. Either they were voted down or they were tabled. And so let's start with roughing the passer and whether that could be reviewable. We know it's a very subjective call. We want to see more uniformity with that call. There's no appetite in that room over there with the owners and certainly with the competition committee to make roughing the passer reviewable. They tried it with defensive pass interference a few years ago. It was an absolute disaster. We knew that wouldn't get passed, and it did not. There were a number of kicking proposals that did not get passed for one reason or another, and so making the punt touch back 25 yards rather than at the 20, that's no longer on the board. And then you can continue the onside kick proposal, the alternate to it. The Eagles proposed 4th and 20, one shot at a 4th and 20 rather than trying the onside kick. That's not happening. We talk a lot about...
The third quarterback is interesting, too.
The third quarterback. The Lions proposed that, let's take the Miami Dolphins from last year, for example. When both of your starting quarterback and your backup, when they are ruled out due to injury, that you can bring up your third quarterback who didn't have to be on the active roster, didn't have to be activated for game day. Could have been the practice squad guy, could have been an inactive. You can bring him up. That did not pass. And so, it always takes a little bit. The first time you get one of these, they never really pass the first time. Usually takes a little bit until they do pass.
That one bothers me in large part because we saw it play out in the playoff game. I mean, why not have the extra quarterback, particularly with where we are with concussions nowadays? When they changed that the concussion protocol wasn't the same.
Right.
And so now a guy goes down, you're down to your second quarterback, and what happens if he goes down? Then what do? And you're in a big. Now people can say, oh, you got to have him active anyways. You can make that choice, but I think this would make it easier on the coaches to make that choice.
Yeah, no question about it.
And JJ, quickly, just kind of piggybacking off of that third quarterback rule there, you said they're tabling it for now, but what happens next? You said it could take some time. Do you wait all the way until next year, or there's some processes that can be taken, I guess, until then? So what happens?
Yeah, I think that at the next NFL owners meetings that we're going to see something like this back on the table. They're going to have more robust discussions about it. And then I think that we may see it pass next year or maybe another year from now. And so one interesting one that did not pass that actually was tabled, the Eagles put forth in the final 30 seconds of the second quarter and the fourth quarter, so at the end of the half, that the clock goes to tenths of a second. So think about basketball, for example. It's basically changing the football clock to a basketball clock. Well, there are legitimate logical and technological issues with actually changing that. Going to Lambeau Field, their physical clocks don't have a tenth of a second on it. And so that got tabled in large part, not because there wasn't support for it, but because there are literally supply chain issues where even if a team wants it in their stadium, they may not be able to have it installed for the preseason.
And one they didn't vote on that I think needs to get done, they need to get rid of the pushing on the quarterback sneaks, because I think ultimately we're going to see a very bad injury happen on one of those plays. It's just not worth it. They need to get rid of that.
You're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and the sort of quarterback sneaks. Yeah, that was never even proposed. That was not brought up to vote for. They also did not propose or vote on the hip drop tackle. So think about the tackle that ultimately landed Tony Pollard with a very serious leg injury. Ultimately, what they could not agree on is essentially what a hip drop tackle is. The Tony Pollard one, okay, that's hip drop. But there were some other ones that the competition committee were showing where there were guys in the room saying, well, I'm not sure that's a hip drop. And so when you couldn't agree on what should be prohibited, you cannot prohibit that thing.
They're going to prohibit so much stuff, we're going to be pulling flags off these guys pretty soon.
You think so?
Yeah. Come on.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
All right, that is our senior NFL insider, Jonathan Jones, and our senior NFL writer, Pete Prisco, joining us here on the NFL rule changes on HQ. Thank you so much, guys. Good stuff as always. We appreciate it. And of course, make sure you check out the Pick Six podcast. The guys are certainly going to have a lot to talk about with these NFL rule changes from the owners' meetings. Make sure you download and listen wherever you get your podcasts, or make it easy, you can scan that QR code on your screen.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.